Each Sunday, our children lead us in declaring, "We are Unitarian Universalists, a people of open minds, loving hearts, and welcoming hands. Somos unitarios universalistas, personas de mentes abiertas, corazones amorosos, y manos que dan la bienvenida." This morning, we also have the great joy of celebrating the newest members of our community. And joining this, when you join a congregation, you're joining this community and you're also joining the faith. And so today I want to explore, what does it mean to be a Unitarian Universalist? Now, one of the most commonly asked questions for folks who are not familiar with the faith is, what do you believe? Have you ever had difficulty answering this question? And it's because belief is not really what defines us, and it's not what holds us together as a people of faith. We are not creedal. You don't have to make a profession of faith or believe in these specific things in order to be here. And so sometimes it's really hard to talk about who we are and why this is our spiritual home. Now, to say that we don't have common beliefs or that we're not creedal doesn't mean that we don't have a rich history that has these theological strands that have informed us. We have a heritage, and we also have a continually evolving way of understanding who we are as a people of faith. So I want to start by talking about who we are by talking a little bit about the gifts from our ancestors and the gifts of our history. So Unitarianism and Universalism, we combined from two liberal Christian traditions that merged in the 1960s to become what we are today, Unitarian Universalists. Now, you may be wondering, we don't understand ourselves as a Christian congregation. By the time we reached the 1960s, there were many strands that were coming in, folks who were humanist and pagan, folks who were influenced by the Eastern traditions. So the time that we merged, we were a big container to hold all of these different pathways of exploration. But our original roots are in liberal Christianity. And here are some of the essence of Unitarianism that I think has stayed with us. The role of reason and critical thought. So Unitarians were some of the first to say, maybe the Bible isn't the final word of God or the only authoritative text. What if this isn't the only pathway to truth within a Christian congregation? This kind of questioning was influenced by exposure to teachings from the Bhagavad Gita, from Buddhists, and particularly from the Transcendentalists, people like Thoreau and Emerson, who were asking, how could there be only one text or only one pathway if every single one of us has a direct connection to source, to something larger than us, to some might understand as God, sometimes they called the oversoul, but something bigger that we had access to that would help us to understand wisdom. So that critical thought and that reasoning opened us to lots of different pathways to explore. And I think one of the other really lasting influences of Unitarianism was this idea of original blessing instead of original sin. So Unitarianism is evolving in a time where the traditions that it's coming out of Calvinism focuses on human depravity, that human beings are born sinful, they need to be saved, and that only a select few would be saved, right? That there was predestination and it was already determined. There was nothing you could do to be saved. And the Unitarians say, I don't know about that. Humans seem like they have a tremendous amount of capacity for goodness to me. What if we're born with original blessing instead of original sin? I think that kernel of original blessing and this idea that every human is sacred and has a little spark of the divine, that we have that essence in us, became what we understand as the inherent worthiness and dignity of each person. We are not originally depraved or sinful. We are blessings, and we are born that way, and it is our work in the world to be a blessing. Also from the Unitarians, the idea that revelation is not sealed. The Bible was not the final word on truth or wisdom. Truth keeps unfolding, and then we're invited on a lifelong journey of learning, and we're a continually transforming faith. We're not the faith we were when Unitarianism was founded in the 1820s, and we're not the faith we were in 1960. We're the faith of today that keeps growing and changing because of who comes into it and how we continue to understand ourselves. So those are some of the gifts from the Unitarians, and then from our Universalist ancestors. I think the biggest is the idea that God is love. That if there is something larger than us, you may not use the term God, that the nature of it is loving, and that it wants us to be well, to heal, to thrive, that spirit of life and love. The primary question that the Universalists were asking is, so if God is love, would God cast his own children to spend eternal damnation in hell? The Universalists were like, I don't think so. And so they said, a loving God doesn't want that. A loving God wants all of us to be saved, wants all of us to be honored. I know for me, coming from the Catholic tradition where there was a real emphasis, at least in the church I was raised in, on the fear of hell and on the fear of being judged by God. To be told that God was love and that all of us were saved and that all of us were destined for something that was good was really radical and really beautiful. Now, I will say the Universalists over time began to focus less on what happens after we die because we started to realize we don't know what happens after we die. Every idea is just an idea. None of us actually know. And so they started to focus on what happens in this life, how we live here. Now, I will say the Universalists understood that they may not believe in hell in the afterlife, but they certainly do believe in hell in this life, and that we create it as human beings. When we forget the inherent worth and dignity of every person, when we harm people, when we forget that we're interconnected, when we perpetuate violence and oppression, that is hell. What we're called to do is to create heaven on earth through social works, through compassion, through a commitment to justice. And that is a legacy of our Universalist ancestors. Also, because they didn't believe that certain individuals would end up in heaven and certain individuals would end up in hell, this idea that salvation is collective, that wherever we're going, we're all going together. And because of that, it means that we are interdependent. Our fates are bound up together. I think about these as we heard in the song of the two sturdy oaks, the two great oaks. This was from words written by Henry David Thoreau, right? I think about Unitarianism, the gift of original blessing, inherent worth and dignity, of Universalism, love and collective salvation. In other words, interconnectedness. We belong to one another. So I will say not all of us believe all of these things, but these are the threads, these are the foundation, these are the roots of who we are as Unitarian Universalists. Now, one of the things I love about Unitarian Universalism is the theological diversity. In one room, I could ask you, what happens after we die? What is the nature of God? What's the purpose of life? I might get 100 different answers, 150 different answers. And isn't that beautiful that we can be part of one community? We don't have to believe the same things theologically. That folks who are theists can sit next to atheists, that folks who are humanist and agnostic, those who are pagan and Buddhist and Jewish and Christian and on, that we can be in one community. And the reason we're here is that we know that we will grow more together, that we learn by listening deeply to each other and hearing the little bit of wisdom that you have, and I bring it against the little bit of wisdom that I have, and that we know that the truth is actually in the center. No one of us has it. No one of us knows all the things, but I think we get closer to it when we're in community, in relationship, figuring it out together. Diversity of belief is not our limitation. It is one of our greatest gifts. Now, even though we may be theologically diverse, I've so often been asked, is there a political test to be a Unitarian Universalist? Do you have to vote in a certain way? Do you have to have certain political beliefs? And I've thought deeply about this as someone who's committed to justice, right? I actually don't think acting on justice or being people of loving compassion is optional for Unitarian Universalists, right? It's who we are and who we're called to be in the world. But do I think that that's aligned with one specific kind of politics? I don't. I think what it comes down to is less about politics and more about values. If you believe that every human being has inherent worth and dignity, if you believe that we're all connected, what are you called to do? How are you called to live? I think it's totally okay if we have different political ideas and we even have different strategies about how to achieve them. Now, there is a line for me, right? Not everyone will find a home in Unitarian Universalism. I know we love to say everyone is welcome here. Here's my line. Hate is not welcome in Unitarian Universalism. If your beliefs oppress someone else, create violence, create injustice, I'm sorry, there's not a home for you here. And I don't think that's being exclusive. I think that means being true to who we are as Unitarian Universalists and true to our values. It doesn't mean that we don't all of us have been raised in systems and structures of oppression that we have to continually learn to undo. I'm not saying you have to have that perfectly figured out already. I'm saying we have to be on the journey together towards that deeper understanding and towards living in alignment with our values. Our faith calls us to embody love. That can look like loving kindness and individual actions. It can be compassion for others who are suffering. It can be caring for each other in this community. It can be going out to do justice work in the world. So if we all don't think the same, what holds us together? What makes us a faith as Unitarian Universalists? For me, it's covenant. It's the promises that we make to one another about how we'll treat one another and how we'll be together. Now, traditionally in religion, the covenant is between the people and God. But I think it's fascinating that our covenant is between us as human beings. Not to say that God or Spirit isn't part of the equation, but the primary promises I make is to you, and you make those promises to me. And to me, that says that in our faith, the most sacred thing we have is relationship, our relationship to one another. We make commitments to each other, and we will fail on those commitments, and we come back over and over again to those commitments to live in right relationship, because this is what matters to us, and this is what is sacred. Now, we do have some collective values as Unitarian Universalists that's in our shared covenant, and that shared covenant is articulated in what were our 7 principles and 8 principles, and is now our values. So love at the center, that love is the theological heritage that we carry forward into all things, and that love informs the way we want to live in the world. Interdependence, that we are connected to one another, our fate is bound up together. Pluralism, many different pathways to truth. Justice, that we seek to make the world loving and whole and allow the conditions for all people to thrive. Transformation, that we are on a journey of continually growing and learning, and we commit to that in community. Generosity, of our time, of our gifts, of our resources to help this community and this faith thrive. And equity, that everyone deserves the right to be treated with wholeness and to have the same access. What is asked of us as Unitarian Universalists is to live our values, to continue creating beloved community together. So you may be able to tell that I absolutely love this faith. I love Unitarian Universalism. I think that it is inspiring and exciting, and I believe that what we do matters in the lives of our community, and it matters in all the lives that we touch and in the relationships we have in the wider community. And so why are there so few Unitarian Universalists? I have a couple of theories about this. One is we don't provide easy answers. I am never going to get up here and tell you what to believe. I can't give you any promises about big T truth. I can't give you any guarantees. I can't promise you heaven or salvation, or that if you just do these things, you won't suffer anymore. And people are hungry for answers and for certainty in a painful world. So what do we offer if we can't offer those things? We offer our understanding in this moment, and we ask you, what do you understand? We ask you to bring your critical mind and your open mind and your curiosity and your wonderings and your uncertainties and all of it, and we come to learn together. This is also one of the things, I was one of those kids who asked questions constantly. Like my mom would be like, cease with the questions, right? This is a place we get to bring all the questions all the time. It's a place where we're willing to be changed and we keep changing for a lifetime. I also love that. I know folks in their 90s who've come through the line and said to me, I'm still growing and changing. Some way I thought about the world, it shifted for me. Isn't that amazing? We don't have the answers, but we're willing to journey together through this great mystery, helping each other along the way. So here's my other theory about why we're not that large of a domination. One, it's not an easy faith. We don't have easy answers. But I think also we don't know how to talk about who we are to the people in our lives. I think because this is a chosen faith and we tend to be mindful about not wanting to evangelize or push our faith on someone else, we don't always know how to talk about our church, to say to our neighbors, our coworkers, our family, our friends, I go to a Unitarian Universalist church and I love it because, and it makes a difference in my life. Would you like to come visit sometime? What would it take for you to take that risk? One thing I want to assure you is that you don't have to describe what Unitarian Universalism is to everybody else. You don't have to be able to summarize the whole faith or tell the historical tradition. You have to say why you love it and what a difference it has made in your life. So here's my attempt. I am a Unitarian Universalist. And I love my church because it's a place where I can bring all of my questions and all of my curiosity, and I can keep growing and learning with people of all ages and all backgrounds. It makes a difference in my life because I know that there's a place where there are people who share my values, and that together we seek to live them, to work together for justice in our community. This place has been a source of healing for me and brings purpose to my life. I wonder if it might be that for you too. We are Unitarian Universalists, a people of open minds, loving hearts, and welcoming hands. Blessed be.